Shedeur Sanders' rookie season in Cleveland was never going to be judged gently, and as the offseason unfolds, the evaluations around him are becoming sharper, colder, and far less forgiving. That reality came into focus when former NFL quarterback Tim Hasselbeck offered an unfiltered assessment of how Sanders is viewed across the league, an assessment that cut directly against the optimism Sanders has expressed about his own future. From the moment Sanders entered the NFL, his story was defined by contrast. He began the pre-draft process with first-round buzz, only to slide all the way to the fifth round before the Browns selected him at number 144 overall. That fall alone reshaped expectations. Quarterbacks drafted in that range are rarely handed long developmental runways, and they are almost never viewed as organizational cornerstones unless they force the issue with overwhelming performance. Sanders' rookie year did not force that issue. He earned playing time in part because of opportunity and instability around him. Injuries, inconsistency, and roster churn opened the door, and Sanders walked through it, starting 7 games. The results were mixed in every sense of the word. Cleveland went 3-4 in those starts, and while there were moments that hinted at competence and poise, there were also long stretches that exposed the limits of his game. Statistically, the season was brutal. Sanders finished with 1,400 passing yards, 7 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. Among qualified quarterbacks, he ranked near the bottom in nearly every efficiency metric. His 68.1 passer rating placed him 41st out of 42 passers, and his adjusted QBR of 18.9 ranked 40th out of 41. Those numbers don't just suggest struggles. They signal that, on a play-by-play basis, the Browns' offense was often operating at a disadvantage when Sanders was under center. For league evaluators, numbers like that carry real weight, especially when they align with concerns about physical traits. That's where Hasselbeck's comments landed hardest. Speaking on ESPN's Get Up, Hasselbeck acknowledged that Sanders does some things well, the kinds of things quarterbacks must do to even survive at the NFL level. He can manage an offense, he can distribute the ball, he understands spacing and timing. Those are not trivial skills. They're the baseline requirements for professional quarterback play. But Hasselbeck made it clear that in his view, Sanders' physical limitations cap his ceiling in a way teams are unwilling to build around. Arm strength, velocity, and margin for error matter enormously in the modern NFL. Windows close faster. Defensive speed erases hesitation. Throws that might be completions in college become interceptions on Sundays. According to Hasselbeck, teams see Sanders as a player who may be able to hang around the league, perhaps for a decade, but likely in a supporting role, as a backup, an emergency starter, or a bridge option. The most striking part of his critique wasn't the suggestion that Sanders could last in the league. It was the assertion that not a single one of the 32 teams would currently look at Sanders and say, "That's the guy we're building around." Hasselbeck emphasized that this wasn't meant as an insult. It was, in his words, simply the reality of how Sanders is viewed. That distinction matters because it highlights the gap between public conversation and internal league thinking. Fans often interpret any young quarterback with starting experience as a potential long-term answer. Front offices are far more ruthless. They don't evaluate based on flashes or resilience alone. They evaluate based on traits, scalability, and whether a player can elevate an entire offense when things break down. So far, Sanders has not shown that ability consistently. That context makes the Browns' current stance at quarterback especially telling. New head coach Todd Monken has gone out of his way not to crown a starter. Despite Sanders finishing last season as Cleveland's QB1, Monken has repeatedly emphasized that the job is open. Dylan Gabriel remains in the mix. Deshaun Watson, despite not taking a meaningful snap since tearing his Achilles in October 2024 and missing all of 2025, is still under contract and expected to compete. Monken's comments have been polite, supportive, and intentionally non-committal. He's excited about Sanders. He's excited about the quarterback room. He's excited to coach the team. What he hasn't said, and what matters most, is that Sanders has any kind of edge. That silence speaks volumes. For a coaching staff looking to win quickly, especially under ownership that expects results, patience is not guaranteed. Sanders may get another opportunity, but it will have to be earned in a competitive environment, not handed to him as a developmental project. And yet, despite all of this, Sanders' own view of his rookie season is markedly different. In an appearance with Kay Adams on the Up and Adams show, Sanders spoke with confidence, bordering on defiance. He said the most important thing he gained from the year was proof to himself that he can dominate in the NFL. He pointed to his ability to complete passes, to put the pieces together, and to show flashes of what he believes he can be consistently. That statement is revealing in two ways. First, it shows that Sanders' confidence remains intact. He doesn't see himself as a fringe player or a placeholder. He sees himself as someone who belongs, who can impose his will when things click. For a quarterback, that self-belief is not optional. Without it, the position eats players alive. Second, it underscores the disconnect between internal confidence and external evaluation. Sanders believes the flashes are evidence. The league believes consistency is the standard. In the NFL, flashes buy you snaps. Consistency buys you job security. The Pro Bowl nod Sanders received this offseason as a replacement sits awkwardly within that debate. On one hand, it gave him exposure, experience, and a chance to be around elite players and coaches. On the other hand, it reignited criticism about rewarding production that didn't match the honor. His performance in the flag football game mirrored his rookie season in miniature. 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, moments of promise, moments of frustration. None of it changed the broader evaluation. Right now, Sanders exists in a narrow and precarious space. He has enough skill to remain interesting, enough experience to be taken seriously, enough confidence to believe he can grow, but not enough proof to convince decision makers that he is the future. That doesn't mean his story is over. Quarterback development is rarely linear. Players have reinvented themselves with new systems, better protection, and improved decision-making. But the margin for error is thin, especially for a 5th-round pick in a league that never stops searching for the next upgrade. Hasselbeck's comments weren't a death sentence. They were a checkpoint. They reflect how the league sees Sanders today, not as a franchise savior, but as a question mark. Whether that perception changes will depend on whether Sanders can turn belief into sustained execution, flashes into habits, and opportunity into undeniable production. Until then, the reality is harsh but clear. Confidence alone doesn't build around a quarterback. The league builds around proof. Shedeur Sanders' rookie season in Cleveland was never going to be judged gently, and as the offseason unfolds, the evaluations around him are becoming sharper, colder, and far less forgiving. That reality came into focus when former NFL quarterback Tim Hasselbeck offered an unfiltered assessment of how Sanders is viewed across the league, an assessment that cut directly against the optimism Sanders has expressed about his own future. From the moment Sanders entered the NFL, his story was defined by contrast. He began the pre-draft process with first-round buzz, only to slide all the way to the 5th round before the Browns selected him at number 144 overall. That fall alone reshaped expectations. Quarterbacks drafted in that range are rarely handed long developmental runways, and they are almost never viewed as organizational cornerstones unless they force the issue with overwhelming performance. Sanders' rookie year did not force that issue. He earned playing time in part because of opportunity and instability around him. Injuries, inconsistency, and roster churn opened the door, and Sanders walked through it, starting 7 games. The results were mixed in every sense of the word. Cleveland went 3-4 in those starts, and while there were moments that hinted at competence and poise, there were also long stretches that